So joining me on the line today, I have Travis Redding and Andy Prosser. Welcome to the call, guys.
Thank you. Good, glad to be here.
Yeah, welcome. Look, today's a really exciting topic for me because I'm a big planner. As you guys know, we do business planning for people, but we're getting to that stage. End of financial year is a point in time. And even though it may be irrelevant other than tax obligations, for a lot of people, it's a great point in time to actually do a review of their last financial year and really assess what worked, what didn't work, what should I do less of, what should I do more of, and put it in almost like a wedge and say, this is what my business did last year. What did I learn and how do I do things better? Today, I wanted to talk about that topic because there's three kinds of people in the world, right? There's people that make things happen. There's people that watch things happen. And there's people who sit there going, I don't know what just happened. And for me, the whole idea of planning is to be a person who makes things happen. So the three elements I wanted to touch on today when we talk about this whole idea of reviewing the year is, first of all, your customer journey, because I think, one of the most important things in business is finding and keeping customers. So how can we do that better? The second one is the use of tech. And that's why I got you here, Andy, because, AI, maybe by the time this goes to air, it's already established and we're all using it, but we don't know how fast that technology is moving. But there's certainly things that are changing more rapidly than ever before. And from my perspective, it's about the team and it's about how to find and keep good people. So tell us a bit about, your view, your thoughts about, maybe we'll start with you, Trav, the customer journey, the whole idea of having a process for managing and holding customers. What are the traps that people fall into with this?
Yeah, I think, David, the traps from a business owner and team's perspective on the customer journey is they're so close to it that they don't really see it. And, their experience of it is what they do from an internal perspective.
Yeah.
So this is a very common place to start when it comes to systemization and introducing process to a business. That's typically one of the key areas I'd suggest they start is have a look from the customer's perspective on their side of the fence and really understand what their experience of interacting with you is. Because for the most part, what you do, the service or product, is very much a commodity. I know we all say we're really good at what we do, but there's 10 other people saying the same thing. So pretty much what we do is a commodity, but the experience of delivering that is.
Yeah, and you keep touching on this word experience. And I think, when we talk about profitability of a business, lifetime value of a customer is one of the most significant things because it costs, the metrics are it costs 6 times more to get a new customer than it does to get an old customer to buy again. And if all people did in their business was keep every customer that they ever acquired, the growth of their business would be phenomenal. But for most people, they're sort of pouring water into a leaky bucket. So they're getting new customers in, but they're losing them just as quickly. So I think that's one element that I think people should be looking at every year and saying, how can I do that better? Which sort of swings me around to Andy because he's been sitting there patiently and quietly and typing into his AI saying, how do I answer this question?
Look, it's funny you mention experience because that was one of the founding principles. So we've got 5 principles in terms of how we deliver what we do.
Yep.
And number 2 pillar is about experience, but we look at the lens, not just at the customer experience, but also your employees and your partners.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know how many times you've been onto a, call center and, the agent on the other end of the line says, oh, can I just put you on hold? The system's going slow today. Right? That's going to show up in the experience that you have as a customer calling in. Your employees are going to tell your customers how bad your systems are, how bad the experience is working for that. So yes, whilst looking at that customer lens is great, don't forget about what you're doing for your employees because that will flow through to your customers anyway.
100%. And I think when we talk about tech and you mentioned this experience thing, these days, if I can't go to a restaurant's website and book a table online, if I have to ring a phone number that goes to a voicemail that I get a call back at 5 o'clock when they show up, I don't book. I just go to the next page. And it sounds a bit weird, right? But I think the expectation for customers these days is that you are responsive, you're tech savvy. I can go to your website on my mobile. I don't need to go to my to my desktop to do that. What do you see as the key elements that people should be focused in on in terms of technology over the next year?
I think one of the biggest things that we've seen through the last few years, right? We've just gone through a pandemic. We're at the tail end of it. It's still sort of kicking around, and there's still elements of it still dragging along.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things at the moment, because the World Health Organization has just declared that it's over and we're now back into BAU type stuff, but still be cautious.
Yeah.
Is that during that pandemic period, we were pushing really hard to work out how we can get our teams working effectively remotely. So we just threw money at the problem and just whatever worked. Right now is a great time, especially with the cost pressures that are going on throughout the economy, to go back and take stock of what you've got, review all of that and go, do we need all these things? Can we get rid of some stuff? Can we optimize it? Can we just get rid of all these other things that we've dragged along that we just threw money at just to get because we wanted to be functional?
Yeah, right.
Now we need to be smart.
Yeah. So I think that's really a consolidation approach, isn't it? Saying we spend all this money on tech to get people to work remotely. It's still useful in places. I think it'll never go away. And the beauty now is everyone knows how to use Zoom, right? Where 4 years ago, half the people on the planet didn't even know what it was. But the truth is people say, I prefer face-to-face than a Zoom call. And people like to work in the office because they know that working in a collaborative team works better. But I don't think it's either or. I think it's a bit of and, isn't it?
It's a hybrid approach. And that's the big thing. How do you find the blend? Because, I just know from my wife's experience, she's always been office bound, right? And her business and the organization she works with had been extremely focused on, no, you can only be productive in the office. They've seen the pandemic as an opportunity to reduce the footprint of their office space. They're a large Australian company. So they've got thousands of these offices around the country. So they look at reducing that. But in her experience and what she's found is she's actually more productive when she's at home. She gets 4 times the amount of stuff done.
Interesting.
Which is in a very administrative process than when she goes to the office. There's too many other distractions. Yes, it's good to have that, to have that social building, but she only does it once a week.
Yeah. And I think when we swing back around to the customer journey, people say your customer experience. These days, it's not just how people face each other. It's telephone, it's email, it's SMS. It's all of these channels have to support each other so that it's transparent. Okay. Because if I said, we're not using Zoom today, we're going to use Google Meet. Most people go, yeah, whatever. Right. No, we're not using that. We're using Facebook, whatever that one's called, Messenger. The technology does the same thing, but it's different platforms. And I think when customer experience comes into it, some people prefer SMS, some people prefer chat on Messenger. How do we maintain that level of customer experience when we've got so many platforms? What's your thoughts on this, Trav?
My thoughts, David. Look, I think, Andy's an absolute whiz when it comes to technology and these amazing tools that enable us to do great things and creates leverage of our time. Yeah. I think when we really stop to think about all the moving parts that happen in a business each day, if you really stop to calculate how many of those actions take place and what part of those are human-centric and what part of technology, overwhelmingly business is still human. Yeah. So there's got to be the human element.
Yes.
And when we're talking about customer experience, I mean, people still need to feel appreciated. They need relationship. They need all those, and we've really got to, whether it's technology or human. I mean, we're sort of deviating away from perhaps the topic of today, but look, it's really understanding those key workflows. You've got to be in control. You've got to be empowered and design and take responsibility of, okay, what are these workflows? How do we want this to function? What parts can we automate? And when we automate it, we certainly don't want to degrade the quality of the experience. We want to increase it. So we don't want cost cutting or cutting corners on delivery, right? So by all means, introduce whatever you can automate, make yourself more efficient, more profitable, but importantly, always deliver a better experience. Don't ever sacrifice that component.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Sorry to jump in here. It was just a really good point around that experience. Yeah. I'm a very big advocate around technology automation, etc. But humans buy from humans. Humans interact with other humans. They don't
Yeah.
like interacting with machines to a certain extent. Take, for example, the phenomenon that occurred in the restaurant industry, right? They've all switched to try to reduce costs, etc., or to reduce contact because of the pandemic, and stuck in these little QR codes on their tables, and you order on your phone.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but there's a local one here that does that, and it's a worse experience.
Yeah.
It's much more enjoyable because you're going to have a server come over to your table. So it's like, understand where technology should be used, but to your point, Travis, make sure that it's delivering the experience. If a machine is going to deliver a worse experience, don't put the machine there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, David, even in one of those workflows, I mean, let's take the example of going on a website and you've got the chatbot pop up. Now, it's fine to figure out what you're actually there for. And once it's done that, you don't want it answering your question. You want to speak.
You want it out of the way. I hate those ones that keep popping up and getting in your face.
Where's it appropriate? Where's it not? Yeah.
So this is interesting, because now we're going to go another can of worms, which is where AI is going. And there's a lot of people threatened by this idea of, AI is going to take over our jobs. And the smarter people are saying it's not going to take over, it's going to augment. It's going to allow you to do more in a shorter period of time. And I think this is an important part of today's conversation, because when we talk about making things happen, right, as opposed to watching things happen, the business owner now has got more changes occurring on a day-by-day basis in how we deliver our service, in how our clients expect us to deliver our service. And it's not about jumping on every new piece of technology. It's about saying, how do we make the experience better? Because the expectation of the client is that you get better at what you do. Not that you stay the same, not that you get worse, but you actually get better. And doing that sometimes means having people show up at the right point in time, right? As you say, you don't really want to be talking to a bot when you're in a restaurant, because I don't think a lot of people recognize this, but people don't go to restaurants for the food, right? They go to restaurants for the experience. And if the experience is good, the food can be mediocre. But if the food is good and the experience is bad, those restaurants don't survive, right? Because people pay money to get served. And the food has to be good, that's the expectation. But good service can compensate for mediocre food. And it's been proven time and time again that, when people have a waiter or waitress that actually recommends dishes, recommends wines, checks how your meal was, suggests a dessert, the experience overall, and also the quality of the food rating goes up. So we've sort of gone around a little bit of a circle, and going back to, what's today all about? Well, I suppose today was about saying, if we draw a line in the sand and we said we have a new financial year ahead of us, the very first thing I believe every person in business should do is look back over the year and identify in the three areas that we've talked about, because they're fast moving, in systems, what do I need to review and either consolidate or add in my customer journey? Because I think systemization, Trav, and I think we've undervalued the importance of this. A lot of people in business don't realize that their primary objective is to systemize and streamline what they do. And that improves, first of all, value for the client, but second of all, profitability for the business. So how do we leverage what we do? And then the third one, which we've touched on as well, is people, right? Because people are getting more expensive. And it doesn't mean that we have to increase our price. We just have to work out how to optimize the use of them. And if we augment our team by having smart facilities around them, we can actually get more face time with our waiter or waitress by making sure that the booking process is streamlined. So if we're going to summarize this in a couple of sentences about what you think people should be doing to review the year, let's start with you, Trav. What do you think are the key elements that they should be looking at?
Yeah, typically, David, people they're growing, they've got bigger teams, they've got better premises, they're doing some great things. But at the end of the day, was usually the case, the bottom line really hasn't changed. It's like, and that's the name of the game, increase bottom line. So it's really to sit back and look at what they are doing, understand where the wins, where the lessons were. And typically, you find businesses, they've always struggled to get change on the way. They know what the change is. They know how to improve, and they've initiated some of these change projects. And, all of a sudden some of the team go, yeah, this is wonderful, and they'll take it on, and then it all starts to fade away and things go back to the way it was. So it's really taking control now, understanding, okay, here's an opportunity to improve from what we've learned the last 12 months.
Yep.
How do we actually bring that to the forefront of action, and making sure we've got a plan to introduce it and make it stick, and not only make it stick, look at ways to perhaps even improve on top of that again.
Yeah.
Now you do that on a few points within your business, then 12 months from now, that's a game-changing event.
Yeah, right. So it's really about how do I capture my process, my IP, and how do I make sure that we're doing things in a consistent way
and make it stick. Yeah.
Make it stick. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Andy.
Yeah. Look, just like this conversation, it's very easy to get distracted by other little things, right? And I think that's the lessons we've learned over the last 3 years around that. There's so much going on. There's so much change. We're trying to grapple with so many different things that we keep chasing things. We keep chasing opportunities down rabbit holes. We keep chasing all of these opportunities. So I see this particular point in time, not just because of financial year, but because of every other event that's happening within the economy and outside of it, right? As an opportunity to really take stock and work out who you are, what your business does, and what you want to be known for, and then focus in on that. No doubt there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that you do in your business that's not adding value, is not helping anyone, and is costing you money. So why are you doing it? So use this as that opportunity to help understand why you are good at what you do. And focus in on that. It's going to affect your experience. It's going to affect your technology use. It's going to affect your team. And as Travis said, it's going to affect your bottom line.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the myth in business is it's not about turnover, it's about leftover. And people get so focused on everyone knows their revenue figure off the top of their head, but you ask them their profitability, and they sort of look at you with vague eyes going, what do you mean profitability? Does that include my wage, or does that include, and it's like, no, what's left over, right? And usually it's very little. And
wouldn't it be wonderful to do less work and make more money? I mean, that's the name of the game. That's an optimized business, you know?
Exactly. And it's a continuum, right? It never ends, right? The whole idea is, how do I get better at what I do? How do I beat my competitors by creating more value with the same amount of cash? And the short answer is to keep looking at your process and saying, how do I improve it? How do I improve it? And leveraging yourself out of the business. And I think if people don't stop to do this, they get into the busyness cycle. They just go, oh, we're busier. But the bank account doesn't reflect the level of activity. And for me, the problem is that the busyness level doesn't, like, it's business, it's not busyness, right? Which means that we've got to look at the bottom line and say, are you profitable? And doing this stop, I think, every financial year, and not just looking at last year's figures, but actually looking at the critical path that you went down and say, what's changed? What do I need to take out? What do I need to add in? This consolidation approach, I think it's a winner, and especially with the economy the way it is, because we're going into, we're in massive inflation, interest rate rises, pay rises are coming because people can't afford to live anymore, so they're going to be sticking their hand out. And I'm a big fan of pay rises. This sounds weird, right? Because I think when someone comes to me and says, I need more money, I look at it as a partnership, and I say, great, where's that money coming from? And I go, what do you mean? You're going to pay it to me? I go, well, it's got to come from somewhere. So we either have to improve the way we do things or charge more. Okay. Either way, we can accommodate it. So I think the message is pretty clear. We sort of in this situation where people don't take stock of the last year and they start planning for the next year. That's the old definition of insanity, which is just doing the same thing. And we've got some smart things happening in our technology space, in our system space, in our people space. There's shifts. And if we don't look at them and say, how do we integrate them, we're going to miss a lot of that profitability. Guys, thanks so much for joining us for today's call. I know it was short and sweet, and we could go on for a long time, and we will when we get back together again and go into a deep dive in these areas. So appreciate your time today.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers, Andy.
Cheers, Travis.